Joining us now is Kelley Ford, who's the Assistant Commissioner for Competition and Basketball Strategy with the Horizon League office. Kelley, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Good, Parker. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here with you today.
So my first question right off the bat is, how does someone find themselves working in a NCAA league office?
Yeah, so there are many different paths, as I've come to find out, as to how people get into college athletics and college athletics administration. My path is very different from most, and I found that most everyone has a unique path. So for me, I've always been passionate about sports. I always thought it would be cool to work in sports, but to be quite honest with you, I didn't really know what that meant or how that looked. My dad is a civil engineer and has worked for the state of Indiana for many, many years. My mom is a high school math teacher. So while my sisters and I played sports growing up, and some of my older sisters were actually student athletes in college, I was not. But while we had that involvement with sports, I didn't really know what it meant to work and make a living in sports. So I didn't do it right away. I went to Purdue. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana. I went to Purdue right here in Indiana and majored in mechanical engineering. So I actually worked as a mechanical design engineer in Indianapolis for just over a year right out of undergrad, and just decided I didn't want to do that for 40 years. I thought, if I'm going to be working for that long, I want to do something that I enjoy a little bit more. So I decided to go back to school and went to Ohio University over there, not too far from Wright State in Dayton. And did a 2-year program there. It was a master's or an MBA and a master's in sports administration. So that allowed me to transition into college athletics and into college athletic administration. So that's kind of how I got to where I am. A position opened up in an ideal time for me right in my hometown at the Horizon League office. And so that opportunity was made available to me. I took it, and I've been at the league office now for almost 4 years and love every day of it. So that's kind of how I got here. Everyone has their own story, but that's mine.
So you mentioned your passion for sports and you wanting to work in sports. Where does that passion for sports come from for you?
Yeah, I'm honestly not exactly sure how it originated, where it originated. I've always had it, like, for as long as I can remember. I remember being a very young kid, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years old, and we used to get the paper at my parents' house. I know newspapers are kind of going by the wayside now. We used to get the Indy Star, and I remember when that paper would come, I pulled the sports section out and I'd read it front to back. And one day my mom asked me, "Well, Kelley, don't you want to read something else? Well, the business section, the living section, just the general news, world news, local news." And it like dawned on me that, oh my gosh, there are other sections of the newspaper. I mean, for me, it's always been sports. I've always loved sports. I played sports growing up. Soccer was my favorite sport to play. Football is my favorite sport to watch. So for me, it's something, it's hard to explain. It's always been there. And it probably stemmed a little bit from, as I mentioned, I have a couple sisters. 2 of them are older, 1 is younger. My older sisters played sports, so I was always being dragged to their sporting events. And I think it's just something that took for me at a very young age and has always been there. So college football is probably my absolute, bar none, favorite sport to watch. And it works out well because in the Horizon League, we do have 2 members who sponsor football, but we as a league do not sponsor it. So it actually allows me to kind of watch football on the weekends instead of working football events as I did in grad school when I was at Ohio University.
So you, like we said, competition and basketball strategy, assistant commissioner. What do you enjoy most about your position?
Yeah, so I'm in somewhat of a new role now. We've undergone some staff transition recently as we've had members of our staff go on to other opportunities that they've had. And what that's done is create additional opportunities for those of us still at the league office to take on more. So my role has developed or evolved a little bit since my first day at the league office back in December of 2017. So like I said, almost 4 years ago, I entered as the director of administration. And now, as you said, assistant commissioner for competition and basketball strategy. So in my role, I oversee the sport of men's soccer. I'm also involved with the sports of men's and women's tennis, but the primary function that I have now is overseeing our men's and women's basketball championships. And that's really the operational level, as well as then being heavily involved with ticket sales for that event. And then also being on the sponsorship team for basketball championships, as well as league sponsorship as well. So what I like most about my role is really we have a small staff. We have about 10 people full-time that work at our league office. So because we have 10 people and because we sponsor 19 championships and we have 12 member institutions, and I laid out some of the things I do, that really is the focus of my work, but that doesn't capture everything. It would take much longer than we have to capture everything that we do with such a small staff. My favorite thing is the breadth of opportunities that we have at a league office. I mean, I get to touch so many different areas. I mentioned the competition, but we get to touch communications and messaging, governance and compliance. I talked about sponsorships, analytics. I mean, we touch all these different areas, and it's because it's all this work that needs to get done, and there's only so many people that are there to do it. So that's what I enjoy most about the work. And then I think what I really learned, I enjoyed the people I worked with in my engineering firm, and that was great. That was not the part of the job I didn't like. But what I've really learned in my professional career is jobs are a lot more fun when you enjoy the people you work with. And I really, really enjoy the small team that we have. I think we're very strong. And so it makes it easy every day to get up and want to go to the office when you enjoy the people and you genuinely think of them as friends, not just colleagues. So that's what I enjoy most, being able to touch so many different areas of college athletics, which is just really cool for me, given my interest in sports and in college athletics, but then also the people I work with.
So you mentioned that you grew up playing sports. You mentioned that you really enjoyed soccer. Is there anything else that you played and kind of got involved with when you were growing up?
Yeah, so I played soccer, was my primary sport, my favorite sport, probably the sport, quite honestly, I was best at. And I did actually, Wright State at one point was a school that I was considering and thinking about playing soccer at the college level. So interesting that I'm on with you today talking about soccer, but I ultimately decided not to pursue college or playing soccer in college and focused on what I thought would be my career. And that was my undergrad work in engineering. We now know how that turned out. So I did, though, play football when I could. So that was only a couple years in middle school. It conflicts with the soccer season. And as I got older, soccer became a year-round thing for me. But I also played basketball up to and including freshman year of high school. So those are my main sports. I did play one season of baseball when I think I was 7 or 8 years old. It was my dad's favorite sport growing up. He wanted me to like it. I tried it. I didn't. I think it broke his heart. He still loves me, though, at least he says. So baseball for 1 year, but soccer was really the primary. And then I did actually coach soccer as well. Throughout college, I helped out with my high school program, the high school team that I played for. And then I coached a travel soccer team for that 1 year that I spent as an engineer, because I had to have my sports fix, right? I had to be involved somehow. And I've gotten out of the coaching now that my full-time job is in college athletic administration, but definitely have a great appreciation for all the coaches out there, and especially those coaches in the Horizon League, because I only saw it for a year, and I saw it at a low-level travel club in local Indianapolis. What our coaches do in the Horizon League and across the country in college athletics is absolutely amazing. The amount of time and effort that goes into what they do, it never stops. They're either recruiting, they're on the training grounds or the court or whatever it is, or they're in competition. It's a nonstop 24/7 job. And then many of them have lives outside of that job too, with their families and their own interests. So how they do it all, I don't know. Just massive respect for all the coaches out there that do that.
Something that you said with coaching is I was a little league baseball coach. I'm an Indiana guy as well, grew up just north of Indianapolis. So I really enjoy that coaching. Just coaching in general is a lot of fun, as I assume that you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. What suburb north of Indianapolis are you from?
I am from Noblesville.
Absolutely. My sister-in-law teaches at an elementary school in Noblesville. One of my really good friends growing up that I played soccer with, we had kids from all over the state and actually outside the state that played on our team. But one of my really good friends growing up went to Noblesville High School. So Noblesville was always a hard out in soccer, at least while I was in high school. So it's been 10 years or so now, but Noblesville, great youth sports there in Noblesville. So yeah, absolutely.
So COVID and the shutdowns on all NCAA athletic programs have wreaked havoc everywhere across the country, especially here in the Horizon League with having no fall sports last year in the Horizon League. When talking about the NCAA as a whole and sports as a whole, what do you is your opinion on how these programs can come back from having such an impact with COVID and shutdowns?
Yeah, I think it's a good question and something that we definitely face in the Horizon League, as you said, but it was nationwide, it was global, right? It was the global pandemic. So
right.
we're looking forward to, we have 2021-22 academic year competition underway. We started with men's soccer this past weekend with league games, so that was really exciting. And we do have some COVID protocols in place, but we're looking forward to, and I know our membership is as well, getting back to closer to the pre-pandemic world than the COVID world that we experienced basically from March of 2020 through the 20-21 academic year. I think nationally speaking, what COVID did was really make us at the league office and on campuses around the country and really at the NCAA level, it made us kind of reevaluate what's most important. And it all came down to student athlete health and safety and competition. And so that really became the focus, and it kind of recentered us on what should we be doing in college athletic administration. So that was challenging. It was a hard time for everyone in every industry. Ours was no exception. We're excited to be hopefully moving past that a little bit here, but I think moving forward to your question of how can we, what have we learned? How can we get back to it? I think it's just the general excitement of getting back to normal. We learned a lot about what we should be doing and how we should be doing it. And the NCAA is undergoing their own review as well right now. They have a committee working on what their role should be in college athletics. So everyone kind of just I think it reshaped the perspective, no matter what perspective that was. Student athletes had a perspective. It was very hard on a lot of them from a mental well-being standpoint in terms of just not doing what they're used to and being able to do what they love, which is competing at the highest level. It had an impact on campus administrators in terms of, well, they weren't doing what they're used to and what they love doing, which is that in-person interaction with their student athletes. COVID made that very hard, anything in person. At the league office level, we had to recenter on what should we be doing, what's our focus. And so we took a deep dive in our strategic plan. And then at the national level too, how should they be spending their time? So I think moving forward, everyone's just excited to be getting back to the pre-pandemic norm and understanding that it's probably still going to be a little bit different, but COVID really just helped shape perspectives. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway from it.
So you said that you were a big sports fan, football being your favorite one to watch. Are you a fantasy football guy?
So I used to be a fantasy football guy. And then as I got into college athletics and some of the rules that we have as employees of college athletics, there's a lot of compliance rules that go into that, right? In terms of gambling and playing fantasy sports and all those things. So I have not for the last few years been in fantasy football, much to the chagrin of some of the guys I used to play with. They used to like taking my money because for as analytical and for as much as I think I know about football, I wasn't very good at fantasy football. So it's probably for the best that I'm no longer in that. It was kind of a big time suck too, Parker. I'm not sure if you play, but my goodness, I was in like 3 different leagues. And then it's like, well, I have Andrew Luck in this league, but I'm playing against him in this other league. So it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. So yeah, it was fantasy football. While it's fun and while there are aspects of it that I do miss, I think all in all, it's probably for the best that I'm not doing that anymore. So yeah, but do you play though, Parker?
I do. And I completely understand your point of it's a very big time stealer.
Yeah.
And so I try to keep it at the minimum, but I do know some guys who are in 4 and 5 leagues. It's like, gosh, how do you have that much time for that? But I got one last question for you, and that's you said you were a big professional sports fan, Colts fan, I might ask.
Absolutely. Being
yes.
born and raised in Indianapolis, the Colts are my an NFL team of choice, always have been. We were spoiled with Peyton Manning and then going right into Andrew Luck. And now I think we're starting to see a little bit more recently about what most fan bases go through. We did not have a good game this past weekend against the Seahawks, but we'll see. I mean, right, guys coming back from injuries and COVID lists and all that stuff. I'll be honest, I would love to see the Colts vaccination rate get a little bit higher and closer to the league average. For some reason, we're not quite on that train, but that's those guys' decision and they have to do what's right for them. But yeah, a big Colts fan. I assume you are too, being from Indy then.
Absolutely.
There you go. Is that tough down there by right state? Because I imagine most people that are local there are probably Bengals fans, if I had to guess, or maybe Browns fans just in Ohio.
It is. So we have a lot of Bengals, Browns, and you'd be surprised, Steelers fans around here.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot of those, and I'm not the biggest Ohio State fan either. So I get a lot of grief for that. But
I'm sure.
Kelley, I can't thank you enough for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Parker. Glad to be here anytime.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for watching The Perspective on WWSU 106.9. Be sure to check us out on YouTube and follow me on Twitter at Parker Testa.